Happy Sunday. This going live thing is no joke. I've been trying to do it for several minutes and was having to work out the kinks with the landscape, portrait, all that. And I actually was wanting to go live earlier this morning, but it was very overcast. I mean, it still is. It's very overcast outside, so I didn't have enough light. So my husband was nice and actually set up some lights so you could see me and there wasn't like a big shadow over my head because the lighting in this room is not the best. But I wanted to, went back and forth and was like, don't even do it. Don't go live. Just do something else, make a video later and do that. But I had made a point in my mind that this morning, Sunday morning, I wanted to jump on and talk to you guys because this is an exciting week in my world. This Sunday is actually the last Sunday in the winter season. Now, some of you listening to that, you might be like experiencing winter weather still, and you're still bundling up, and it doesn't look like spring is on the horizon. Others of you, like here, I live in Florida, so we are definitely seeing evidence of spring in the air. But no matter what your weather is actually like, this is the official last Sunday in winter. And if you don't know, if you're new and you just happen to stop on this live, I have designed the past few years seasonal journals. And they follow along with the 13 weeks of each season. So 4 times a year, a new journal comes out that walks you through the seasons in a way that the intention is to help you connect with God and also connect with yourself in a greater way. And I hear from a lot of you, and I have through the years, that most of us, because it's naturally how we're wired, we have this desire to connect with God, our Creator. And it's something that's innate within us, whether we recognize it as that or not. It's that restless longing sometimes that we don't even know what it is, that we were designed to be in close relationship with God. And what I've heard is the struggle, the tension of finding that connection in a meaningful way. And that is one of the main reasons that I wanted to develop this journal, because I found some practices and rhythms that I incorporated into my own life that helped me outside of all of the ways that I had always experienced God in. And not that any of those ways are negative or bad, but they were all external ways, going somewhere or taking something in a different way. So the intention with the journals are really to invite you to see where God is at work in your life. And it hopefully is some prompts and some thoughts that help you to open up your heart and your eyes to recognize and see where God is already at work in your life. Because I can promise you, He is. God is at work in your life all the time. And we just don't always have the eyes to see where He is at work. So that's what I want to talk about today, that if you have this desire and this longing to connect with God in a deeper way, but you always feel like you're missing something when it comes to the end of that desire, like you're missing something and that everybody else has this secret that you don't know. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how the journals that I've created and designed were created to help bridge that gap between that longing that you have and living an authentic connection with the God that designed and created you, okay? So I want to talk about this, but what I wanted to start with was, since it is the last week, this is the winter journal that we're walking out of. And if you follow this channel, then you might see that every Sunday, an audio pops up that walks through each season. So I wanted to kind of just look at the last few weeks in the winter journal as we're closing that out. And I just realized I had these glasses on. I put these on because I mentioned my husband put up lights and my eyes are sensitive. And that is one of my intentions for this spring, because I got out of the habit of wearing like blue blocker glasses. And some of you might think that's weird. I thought it was weird too. When I used to see people wearing them, I'm like, why are they doing that? That's weird. But it really is helpful in helping you live in circadian rhythm. And I can tell a big difference. I have not, probably for the last year, I got off track with daily watching the sun come up, and at night putting on these glasses before I go to bed, and wearing them in the morning before the sun gets in my eyes. Kind of got out of that habit, and I can tell you, I feel it. I can feel it in my body of how my digestion works and all that kind of thing. That's a whole other rabbit trail that I'm not here to talk about today. You can research that on your own, but I just realized I had these glasses on, so you might be wondering why. They're not reading glasses. They are blocking the blue light, and when my husband put the lights up, it felt a little strong, so I was like, I'm putting these glasses on. So anyway, the last few weeks in this winter journal, I was talking to a group of girls yesterday, ladies, that we've been walking through the winter journal together this season. And so I was mentioning to them yesterday that sometimes, even as somebody that wrote the journal, when you get to these last few weeks, week 12 and week 13, which is talking about reflecting and then preparing for moving into the next season, mentally, you can almost think of like, okay, it's the end and it's time to move on. I'm ready for the next season, and just kind of not really intentionally pay attention to the message of these chapters. And I feel the same way. It is kind of like, okay, we're wrapping this up. Let's move on to the next thing. But as I talked with them yesterday about this is one of the most important things to finishing out a season strong and how we will move into the next season. It's so important that, and that's the whole point of what the journals invite us into. It is stopping and recognizing where God's at work. So as we're moving into the next season, I think it's so powerful when we can take time to stop and reflect on those ways and make some choices and decisions in our heart and mind as we're moving into the next season, how we want to continue to water these things in our life. So here's one of the last chapters, Reflections. This is from the She is Awakening Winter Journal. It says, the days of winter often feel endless, stretching beyond what we think we can bear. The shadows seem to conceal the answers we long for, leaving us to wrestle with uncertainty. Yet within this season's quiet depths lies a surprise, a sacred discovery we didn't expect. Winter reveals its own kind of answers, whispering truths hidden in the dark. They come gently like the winter sun, glancing off the snow, pure and breathtaking, steadfast and holy. These answers don't just illuminate, they ground us, reflecting a light that sustains us even in the coldest hours. As the psalmist says, I waited and waited for God. At last, he looked. Finally, he listened. In the stillness, God meets us, lifting us from the depths, steadying our steps, and teaching us a song of praise that rises even in the chill of winter. This is the mystery of winter's darkness, an invitation to abandon fear and trust the God who makes even the shadows sacred. And that last line, it's actually a quote that's at the end of this week's focus. And that's one of the things in the journal. There are quotes that I've made and drawn and written that you can download for free when you purchase the journal. And it's kind of like a gift that comes with the journal. But I love the message of this reflection. And one of the things that stands out to me where it says the shadows seem to conceal the answers we long for, I circle the word seem, because I feel like when we're walking through a winter season, and let me just say this, I know that there are many of you that even though we are this next week walking into the season of spring, you will be walking into the cyclical season of spring still in a winter season in your life due to a circumstance or something that you're walking through. And so just because the cyclical season is changing in your personal life and your life circumstances, you are still in a winter season. And that's the tension that we have in this life of moving through when there's bright sunny days, yet we're walking through something heavy and dark. And back to the shadows seem to conceal the answers we long for. This is what I found when it talks about the sacred discovery in winter that we don't expect. What I was surprised to find in winter seasons and walking through winter seasons was the shadows and the darkness that I felt were life crushing and made me feel hopeless at times when I didn't see any light and everything around me and the winter season felt dark. The shadows seem to conceal the answers we long for. And what I found was the answers were there. In the dead, dark depths of winter, God was there with me. And the answers that I desperately longed for were right there with me, but I could not see them. I couldn't see them because of how I was viewing my circumstance, because of what my perspective was in the winter season. And that's the power of our connecting with God in a deep way, because in his presence, we have a perspective shift. In those moments of us intentionally focusing our heart and mind on who God is. I mean, at the start of each journal, the focus verse is, "Be still and know that I'm God," from Psalms. And that's the power. That's the power of it all, that when we get still and move away from distractions and quiet our hearts and our minds, and we focus our attention on who God is and not our circumstance, not any relational issue, not any job issue, whatever it is that is the darkness that we feel like we're moving through and that we're surrounded by. In that time of connection, we can connect with God in such a beautiful, powerful, natural way that dispels fear. It dispels loneliness, because in that time and in that moment, we feel to our core that we are not alone, because God is with us, and God's strength fills us. It fills our spirits, and we leave that time changed. We whether we're sitting down to read or write in our journal, to pray, or you're driving in your car, wherever it is, I mean, God's not confined to time and space. And that's also what has awakened from intentionally experiencing and connecting God on a deeper level, that there's no more separation of I need to connect with God to feel his presence. As believers, the presence of God is within us. And when we are strengthened by that, and our identity is solid in that, that's what we live in. That's what we live and move in and out of our days. And it is such a place of peace. And that doesn't mean that hard things don't come up and there's not things that we have to deal with, but we know where our source of strength is. So if we are feeling weak and we need a reminder of truth, we know exactly the space that we can find that in. So I want to encourage you, as we're wrapping up the season of winter and moving into spring, I want you to look back over these last few months and ask yourself, here's some of the prompts that are in the winter journal. Spend some time reflecting on questions you have had in this season. What are some things as you were walking into winter that maybe you were asking God to show you and to reveal to you? And this goes into the next prompt. How might God be revealing himself in these questions that you are holding? Here's the thing I found, that when we ask God something, he's leading and he's answering those. And I think sometimes we miss it because it doesn't look like what we think it should look like. I know that's usually what it was for me. I was praying and asking God something, and he was answering me. He was leading and showing me, but because it wasn't the answer in the way that I was looking for, I oftentimes didn't even recognize that. Can anybody relate to that, where you feel like you have been asking God for something for a long time and you feel like God's silent and that he's not answering you? And maybe he is. And it's just not in the way you were looking for. And so you're still searching and looking when all along he is leading and guiding you, and you're just not seeing it. So how might God be revealing himself in the questions that you're holding? I would love for you to look back over the last few months at some of those things. Where have you seen? So even if it's not what you were expecting or what you were looking for, what are some of those things? And I want you to take some time, maybe write them down. And if you don't want to write them down, think about them. Think about it. God, what was I praying and asking for? And where might you have been answering the cry of my heart, but yet I didn't even recognize it because it didn't look like what I was looking for? And I think you might be surprised. And this is where we can grow as we're moving into the next season, when you can see, okay, God, I see this now, where I didn't even recognize that that was you kind of tweaking my path, inviting me into something new, a door that I wasn't even looking for, that I didn't recognize that it was maybe your leading. That's the kind of things then, as we're moving into this next season of spring, that you can intentionally water, because now you've recognized it and you can see, okay, God, I see that Holy Spirit's kind of leading me in a new way and inviting me into maybe something I hadn't thought about. Because here's the thing, and I say this in the beginning of each journal. I make a statement that I actually read out loud in the audio every week, because I think it's so important that we remember it. And it says, you know me better, talking about God, you know me better than I know myself. And that sounds simple, of like, well, yeah, he's God. He knows better than us. We can say we know that, but do we actually live our lives in that awareness? And I would have to say most of the time we don't, because like I said, we pray and we ask things and then we feel frustrated, like God's not answering our prayers, when he probably is, and he is leading and guiding us, but we think we know better than God. We're like, here's the answer I'm praying for, God, and I need you to ABCD, do it this way, and then life will be great. When God sees the big picture, we get so focused on this one particular season and we hyper focus on it, and then we live all of our days from our perception of this season. So it's affecting us. And that's why I think it's so important that we have to take the time to intentionally look at our life and see where God's at work, because everything is influencing, what we're doing today. The choices and how we're thinking today are affecting our tomorrows. And if we continue this endless loop of the way we've always lived and we're frustrated with the way life is, it's not going to change. Nothing is going to change until we are aware of the power and the presence of God in our life and how he is showing up in our life that we're not even recognizing and saying yes to, and allowing those things to grow and to flourish in our life. So there's that. That's winter. This is the last Sunday in winter. And I just wanted myself even personally to stop and acknowledge that. And that's why I had thought, okay, you know what? I want to go live and I want to talk about this. I want to talk about walking out of a season well, reflecting on the lessons that I've learned. I did a video a few weeks back talking about the lessons of winter and some of the things that I felt like came up for me that I was being invited to look at more closely and invited into. So anyway, I just noticed as I sit back, my Dolly shirt. One of my daughters got me this for Christmas. I love Dolly. And actually, last fall, this is a side note, my daughters and their families, we actually got to make a quick trip to Dollywood, and it was so fun. And actually, while I was there, I got this Dolly mug. I didn't even plan this, that I was wearing the t-shirt, and then pulled the Dolly mug, so I feel like it's kind of a theme, which I have been thinking about Dolly a lot lately, because if you don't follow the news or you're not a Dolly fan, then you might not know that her husband of many years passed away recently. So she has been on my heart. So I think that's what has me reaching for my Dolly shirt more often these past couple weeks. So does anybody have any, let me look and see if anybody's, I wasn't even sure on a Sunday morning how many people would actually be available to pop on a live, but I was like, not really concerned. Not that I wouldn't love to chat with you, or if you are here, but I know that I can post this later. And that was another reason I did want to talk about and look at some things, but I didn't want to have to make the video and do any edits. I thought, you know what, I'll just go live, talk about it, and then I can upload it and the information will be out there. So here's what I want to mention. So we're walking out of winter, and this Thursday, March 20th, we welcome the first day of spring, and the new spring journals are here. She is Awakening Spring Journal. And this is the third year that I have released the seasonal journals. And this it started with spring a few years ago. And this spring journal has had quite a little transformation. Now, every year I have tweaked the journals a little bit as I've used them, and just, you know, as we move through things, then we see ways we want to improve things or things we want to add. So there was definitely some things that in the last year I thought, you know what, in next year's journal, I want to incorporate some things. And one of the things that I'm excited about is, and I actually became aware of this the first year. Some of you might be like, well, you're not already aware of that. As I put together a journal, then I really wasn't aware. I mean, obviously I know we go through the different seasons in life, but I wasn't aware that every season is like a 13-week cycle. And yeah, probably should have known that, but I wasn't aware of that. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Then somewhere along in that first year, I realized, just because you know how it's a lot of people talk about, and I actually have, a few years ago, I did, as we were ending the year, like 90 days or 100 days stronger, like as we were moving out of a year. And the power of this 90-day cycle. So through the first year of the seasonal journal, I realized, oh, wow, the correlation between basically 90 days is 13 weeks, basically. So I was like, how cool that is such a powerful cycle that a lot of people talk about, the power of focus in that. So that is one of the things that I wanted to incorporate in that, the power. Let me just flip over and find that. Because here's the thing, this is what I thought. And so I would like to, and I shouldn't say I would like to, I need to say I'm going to go live every day this week until the first day of spring. And I'll probably do it then too. And I want to share something from the spring journal, just because there's so much to share. And so I thought, you know what, I will just every day pop on and share something. But since I just brought that up, that aspect up, I want to find that. Okay, so here's this page right here. Harmonizing with Nature's Rhythm, a 90-day journey of intentional living. Okay, I think that's not the page. That does talk about it, but hang on. I was wanting to read. I'm not sure which page though, so I will just tell you. I talked about at the beginning of the year how the past few years I've shifted from moving into January with a list of goals of like, okay, I want to do all these things, or these are the things this year I want to accomplish. And I stopped doing that because, like many of you, we do that, and then a few weeks, few days even, few weeks, months in, it's like we've lost sight of that. I mean, especially by mid-year, we're like, what even were the things I wrote down? And I think that happens because it's, for most of us, not everybody, but for most of us, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, it's like too long. It's like too long for me to focus on that. And I need to work in smaller bites. And so maybe that is the beauty of why I'm so drawn to talking about and living through the rhythm of the seasons. And so when I found and thought about this whole 13-week, 90-day focus, I thought I want to incorporate that. And so I actually, these past few months, have done that, of focused on, and I did it several times last year too, where I looked at the 90 days, and so I wasn't looking at a whole year, but I was just looking at the season. I was looking at the 90 days and like, what do I want to put my hand to in these next 90 days that will make a difference? And I can see, so, and I can move forward in some ways. So I'm not waiting 6 months. So it doesn't, but let me say this, it doesn't mean that you'll necessarily complete something in 90 days, although you absolutely can. And I absolutely did things that could have stretched out a whole year and not even happened in the year because I would keep moving the marker. But when I had that 90-day thing of like, you need to finish this, you need to start this, and this can be finished. I mean, there were several things where I knocked out last fall that could have taken me triple the time, but because I got hyper focused and I wasn't unhealthily working toward these things. I just very much intentionally, like, this is what I'm going to use my time for. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to finish that. And I'm going to do this. And it was so helpful because I could see the start and finish. So that's the page I was looking for that's in here somewhere that talks about, that's something common for all of us. And it's so powerful when we can shorten that time through the next 13 weeks, the next 90 days of spring. We can look at this season and think, where do I want to grow the season? And here's the thing too, with the difference in January, it's really not a natural time to hit the ground running. I mean, we're in winter, we're in a winter season, in the natural realm, and maybe in your life you are too, but it's a time where it is kind of like a more chill time. And we've come off the holidays, and there's just a different, to me, even though I do feel this new year energy and this fresh start, and I love that, I do very much feel still in this season of hibernation in one sense. And I kind of did that. I actually took a break from Instagram the first part of the year, and I felt such a renewal and rest. It was kind of like, I'm just going to like step back from moving forward on a lot of things. And there's obviously work that we all have to continue doing. So it wasn't like I was just sitting around sipping coffee all day. Obviously I was living my life and working and doing things, but I wasn't starting up new things. I wasn't setting huge goals to accomplish and work towards. It was more of a rest and a refreshing time to take in those months. And so because of that, I feel like I have felt things ramping up as the weather's warming up and as spring is coming. I feel revived, and I feel like some things are ready to awaken. So I think entering into the spring season is the perfect time to set goals and to intentionally move towards growth and look for things that have been planted in your life to flourish and to grow and to thrive. And on the back of the book, this is one of my favorite things. It's one of the quotes from the book. And it says, spring has a way of waking everything up, including us. So if you can't tell, I'm excited about moving into spring. And I'm not only excited for myself, but I'm excited for you. I'm excited for all the ways that I know God has been and wants to continue growing and working in our life. And I'm gonna take a sip. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee and see if there's anybody. I need to move this. I want to see who's on here. I know that sometimes we struggle with the lack of growth we see in our life. And one thing I've come to realize, I think that we are so close to our lives that our perspective is not always accurate. You know how sometimes when you're just so close to stuff, like if I'm holding this book like right up to me, I can't even read what it says because it's so close. My vision is distorted. And I think that's sometimes the way it is with our own lives. We're so close to everything in our life that we can't even see and recognize how God is moving in our life and how we are growing. And that is the power, I think, of intentionally moving through a seasonal journal, because it asks questions. There's prompts and thoughts that invite us to really think about something, not just to read it and then keep moving on. This isn't a book that you start at the beginning and you just like, okay, I'm going to read this whole book. It's a book you walk through. It's a journal you walk through that invites you to see how and where God is working in your life, ways that maybe you weren't even aware of, ways you didn't even notice. And there's, at the beginning of every journal, there's a section that's called Daily Rhythms and Intentions. And it just kind of walks through some scripture and some intentions at the start of the journal that kind of help guide you through. It kind of helps posture your heart of, this is how I want to move through this journal. And it talks about creating space, a heart sanctuary. Because I know sometimes, there's language that I use and other people use, and you're like, what does that even mean? What does it mean when you're talking create space to connect with God? So on this page, it kind of gets real and talks about that. And he says, what does creating space to get still look like? And it's not some perfect place where you have to have this homey little cozy corner to get away with God. God can meet you anywhere, in any way. It's less about the physical space and it's more about the space in our heart and the intention in our heart. And it's so important that we intentionally have that posture of connecting with God. And that can happen anywhere. It can happen when you're standing in front of a sink full of dirty dishes and just intentionally focus your heart and thoughts of like, and not just then, but it's like you are like, you're really programming yourself to intentionally look for God. And that's when you see him show up. Hey girl, good to see you. Happy Sunday. I hope you're having a good weekend. Because here's what, another thing that I found as I've become so much more intentional about these things. There's almost this, sometimes a tinge, I don't want to say regret, but where I look back, happy Sunday to you. I look back and there is almost this tinge of regret of like how many moments that I missed where I didn't recognize God at work in my life. Because now it's like I can walk outside, walk down the street, and it's just like I so recognize his awesomeness in everything. And I want the same for you. And so there's so many things in this journal that give you practical ways. And so it's not a to-do thing of like, you have to do it this way. I think it kind of just, if you're not naturally bent towards recognizing God's hand in the world and in your life, it kind of helps open up your heart and mind to that of, here's something. There's sacred practices. Dawn watching. Begin your day witnessing spring's awakening. Notice what's newly emerged. Listen for morning birds. Feel the freshness of possibility. And I mean, just this morning, I took the dog out early this morning and the sun was just coming out. And I actually grabbed my phone. And I do this a lot of mornings. And sometimes I'm like, does it really look that much different? But I'm somebody that likes to take pictures and document things, obviously. But as I was looking up at the trees and into the light, I could hear the birds chirping and I could see them then flying through where the image was in the trees. that are now like little buds popping out on. And it's just every day that I see it, it's just like I feel the newness and the fresh start and the fresh day. And I'm reminded of how God's mercy and grace is fresh and new every morning. And it feels like this just big hug from God every morning of like, here we are. Here we are. Let's do this. Let's do this. And you know what? It's the same for you. It's the same for you. There are all these meaningful moments in your day that can seem so mundane. I know I'm in a different season of my life, but I remember so many seasons where I felt that life was just this autopilot of the same thing over and over, like I was caught on this hamster wheel. And so we're all going to have those seasons, but even in those seasons, there's such beauty to be found in those moments when we will look for them. I really believe that, and I know that to be true. So before we jump off, I don't want to make this too long, but one thing I do want to mention, obviously I would love for you to grab a spring journal. Most in the previous seasons, we've offered a hardback and a softback, but because this journal was so much bigger, to kind of make it still in a good price range, we are just going with a soft cover this time. And you can go to my website, susanbeth.com, to find ordering information for that. But we'll actually have all when I do the description and when I upload this, I will have that information for you. And you can also order it on Amazon if you'd rather do that. And I think that the link for what I'm getting ready to talk about was dropped into the chat. But I want to mention this too, because whether you get the physical journal or not, I'm talking, like I said, every Sunday, the audio comes out here on YouTube. You can follow along in that way. You don't have to have this journal, although there are lots of things added this time that are different than previous journals that I don't know will necessarily be in the audio version that is coming out every week. So I think there's definitely benefit. I want to hold something in my hands. I like to turn the pages. And there's something powerful in that. I mean, scientifically, it's proven that there is something when we put pencil or pen to paper, the processing that comes out, it's proven that it's helpful for our brains and for our emotions. And so I'm one that loves, I want to fill it. I want to flip the pages. I want to mark in it. And I love to say that when you get a journal, it's yours. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to use this journal. It's my journal, and I don't use it like a lot of you would think that I would. Let me take a sip of water. I mean, there's some days I'm writing lots of thoughts, but then I could go several days and not write anything. So it's not a rigid, it's not dated to where you're going to feel behind. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to slow down and connect with God and take notice of how he's working in your life. So I would definitely love for you to join me on this journey. And if you order one, we started shipping them out last week. So I know some of you already have yours and have messaged me or sent me notes that how excited you are to be starting this journey. And if you aren't able to get it this week, it's not too late. I mean, you can get it next week if you need, and jump in whenever you can, because you're going to get something out of it no matter when you start. You don't have to follow along exactly with the weeks. It's the intention of noticing and walking through spring with God. But I wanted to mention something else that I haven't had before, that I'm super excited about. And I think it just adds a whole another layer and value that doesn't, it's kind of like a compliment to the journal that I would love to give you. And that's what I'm saying. I think there's information that has been dropped in the chat, that a link where you can get this, but it's called 25 Ways to Bloom This Spring, Your Journey to Growth and Renewal. And it is a free download that you can get. So even if you've already gotten the journal or you're going to get the journal, you still need to get this. You don't have to get this, but I'm saying I think I love it. I love it. I mean, I think it's cute with the little flowers on it, but I love what it invites us to. It says, hey there, spring is finally here. That amazing time when everything around us starts fresh. It's the perfect season to shake off winter, try new things, and grow in ways that matter to your heart and soul. As nature wakes up, let's wake up too. So then there's some ways it says for your spirit. So it talks about some different things for your spirit. Morning sunshine moments. Let's scatter some truth. The 60-second reset. Create your happy corner. Let's go journaling. With your people. And it gives 5 different things that with your people help form connection in the season. In nature, barefoot prayers, flower power moments, garden wisdom, sunset surrender. Get creative. No pressure art journaling, growth soundtracks, move and groove prayers, 3-line wonders. Then there's a section everyday life, mindful meal times, screen-free zone, the less is more challenge. So lots of stuff. I mean, there's like several pages of this, and I think it's so good. I love it. So even if you have the journal, you're going to want to get this. And like I said, you can go to the website. There'll be links in this live that I'll have where you can go on and download it. And it's my gift for you because I want you to grow this spring. God has beautiful things that he planted within you already. And it's our responsibility to water those things and to nourish and feed those things and trust God with the growth. I know sometimes it's frustrating because we feel like we've done those things and we haven't seen the growth maybe that we've desired or wanted. But here's the beautiful thing that is so wonderful. When you can get to the place where you trust God with the process. Because for so many years, I wanted to control and control the nourishing. I wanted to control the growth and all of the process. And that's not how it works. There is a season and there is a rhythm that God put forth from the beginning with everything. And it's the same with us. And like I said, our creator, he knows us better. Hey, Cheryl, good morning. Hope you're doing well. He knows us better than we know ourselves. So even when we think that we should be growing in a certain way and things should look this way, God knows what he's doing. And we can trust him with that. And when we live in that space of that peace that passes our human understanding, it is a beautiful place to live in. And it makes life so much more enjoyable when we don't feel like we have to control all of these moving pieces. We don't have to control people. We don't have to control outcomes because we trust. We trust and we surrender. And in that surrender, that doesn't mean we don't do anything. That doesn't mean we're just sitting back and saying, okay, God, whatever happens. It's a co-laboring. It's a co-laboring. It's a relationship with our creator that God desires on his part. That's why he formed it. That's why he made us. He longs to be in close relationship with us, with you. He longs to hear your thoughts, the good, bad, and the ugly. You know, we don't have to, for so long I thought my prayers, and if I sat down to write, needed to sound pleasing to God in a way that wasn't really how I wanted to talk and to speak to him. And that's not what he was asking. That's what I had put on myself. God knows us, and he wants us to show up honestly, authentically. And you could say, well, yeah, well, he knows. He knows everything so he can see what's going on. Yeah, that's true. But it's no different than with other people in our life, in your real life. They might know, but it's like you still want somebody to verbalize something to you. Whether everybody in the room is aware or not, it is meaningful when the person will say to you, hey, Susan, I recognize this. I see this. And it's the same thing with God. It's a relationship, and he does the same for us. God is so personal. And it's so supernatural. I think sometimes we can make things sound so woo up here that people get confused, and it's like I don't even understand that. And it does. It blows me away because it is so supernatural how he does work in our life and how he can be so real and tangible in our lives and in our days. And yet it's so natural. It's so natural. It's not this religious list of things that I have to do or need to do to connect with God. It's me choosing to be aware of his presence that is always there. It's always there. So I wanted to remind you of that today, that your God has incredible things for you. He has plans and purposes unique to how he designed and purposed you. And just like we're going to start seeing all the green pop up around us, I want to see that same thing in us. I want to see that same thing in you. And I would love to hear if you want to. I don't know how long, I'll have to figure that out. In this chat, if you're saying stuff to me, I see some of you are writing comments. I don't know if I can go back and see that. So even when I post this live, if there's some things you're desiring to see grow and flourish in your life this season, I would love to hear about it. Would love to cheer you on in that, because that's what I want this community to be. I want it to be where we believe that there is a God that designed and created us to co-create in the world in bringing forth beauty and goodness. And that's going to look different for each of us. And I love that. I love that. We're not meant to be cookie cutter copies of each other. I need you to be who God designed and created you to be. I want you to use your voice to speak the things that he puts on your heart that matter, that resonate into the world and bring forth something that we need to hear. So I am cheering you on. I'm looking around to see, because I've made some notes to see if I should do this. So grab one of these, grab your 25 ways to bloom this spring, order your spring journal. I would love it. I would love for you to walk through this season alongside of me. But thanks for being here. I'm excited. Okay, I want to figure out how I can go back and see some of these things that you have written in the chat so I can read them. But thanks for being here. Like I said, I will be popping on sometime tomorrow, every day this week as we're moving into spring, because I want to share some things from the journal and invite you into walking through the season with me. So I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Does anybody have any questions? If you are on here, I still see a few people are still on here. If you have a question about the journal that I can answer, since I'm here, why not? And I'll see if it pops up. Oh, wait just a minute. I'll take a sip of my coffee. Any questions? Any questions? I'll wait just a minute. If not, then I will go off and then I will upload this and you can ask me in the comments after it goes live. Okay, I don't see any, so I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you find refreshing and rest before you head into this week. And I love you guys. Thanks for being here. We'll talk tomorrow.